And now, you're tuned in to RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's Reveler Sports.
What's up, Bucs Nation? This is Musab, one of your co-hosts tonight, bringing you the sunshine and lightning that is the RBLR Bucs podcast. Well, folks, I'll tell you this. We are just 2 hands away or 10 days away from the preseason kickoff. And while the wait does feel like forever, at least training camp is underway. And also, I want to give a quick shout out to the Tampa Bay fam in our podcast, RBLR fam. Make sure to check out our guys from the Rays, Lightning, Rowdies, and also our women's soccer team, the Tampa Bay Sun, which will be starting the regular season in August. But for now, let's focus on the here and now. I know we've been doing a lot of, reflecting this off season, and it's been rather unemotional, is I guess I would say. But we're almost there, and I mean, fine. I guess these guys aren't playing actual like scrimmage, but at least it's some kind of action, which is better than nothing. So, joining me tonight, though, is the man who knows the team inside and out. He is the one and only Mr. Carter Brantley. Let's get this party started, shall we?
Indeed, yeah. Let's get this party started right. It's another week closer to the preseason starting. Like you said, training camp got kicked off, and that Hard Knocks show with the Giants is finally over. So now we'll start watching the Bears Hard Knocks, the actual training camp edition, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of mindless and silly, but hey, there's a lot of stuff that's on TV that's mindless and silly. But we've got some Buck stuff to talk about. There's plenty of stuff coming out of training camp. We're going to talk about Tristan Wirfs, position battles. There's a new slew of top 100 people that we can talk about as well, and a couple of Bucks made the list as well. So we'll get into that. But unfortunately, we also got some tough news today for the Bucks. Tua Opeta is unfortunately he just suffered an ACL tear. The offensive lineman, Sua Opeta, my apologies. I thought his first name started with a T, but Sua Opeta, unfortunately, he's going to be out for the rest of the year with the ACL tear. It's kind of tough news because he was, going to be competing for one of those interior offensive line spots. Him, Cody Mauk, Ben Brenderson, which, we'll get into those position battles later on in the episode. And unfortunately, Sue is not going to be a part of it, which just kind of sucks. So, that's unfortunately the nature of it. That's how it be sometimes. But that's hopefully the Bucs will be able to move past it, and focusing on the offensive line, we'll kick things off with the Tristan Wirfs talk, because that's kind of been the big thing with the Bucs recently. He's seeking an extension. He's kind of what's called a hold in, I guess. He's attending practice and training camp so he doesn't get fined, but he doesn't necessarily want to hurt himself because he's in the midst of contract negotiations. So with his extension, they're talking about record breaking, just setting the new market for left tackles. In your mind, Mr. Tariq, is he the best left tackle in the NFL? Does he deserve to set the market for left tackles?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Easily one of the best, if not the best. I mean, I feel like many could argue Trent Williams. But I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you this, if he goes on any other team, he can pick any team he wants to go to. I think he's that good. I mean, the fact that he can go from, left or right tackle, and, there was a lot of people who thought, the adjustment, wouldn't be there, but, he proved the haters wrong. And I mean, he got the job done. He's young as well. He's only 25. So, I mean, he's got a bright future. And you got to think about, I mean, offensive linemen overall, they last pretty long, a good one. You know what I'm saying? This is not your cornerback or running back. So, yeah. I think
Absolutely.
so. I'm with it.
Yeah, no, I'm with it as well. He's the Antoine Winfield Jr. of offensive linemen. He's definitely up there. I don't know if I'd quite, put him over Trent Williams right now, but the age factor, like you mentioned, is a huge thing. So he'll get paid more than Trent Williams because he's only 25, like you said. So he's arguably about to enter the prime of his career if he's not already in it. So it's going to be an interesting kind of storyline to monitor as training camp continues. I know that there are other players throughout the league seeking similar, well, not similar extensions, but what are your thoughts on like the whole holdout thing? I mean, there's just like Matthew Judon is the first name that comes to my mind. He's on the Patriots and he's seeking a new contract and he's not reporting. I don't believe he's reporting to training camp because he's not going to show up, get hurt, tear his ACL, like unfortunately Sua just did. He's not going to injure himself when he's seeking more money. And I don't know. In my mind, it makes a lot of sense. You're not gonna injure yourself while you're also seeking more money. It just doesn't make sense. So from a player's perspective, I totally get it. Obviously it sucks. It's kind of a setback for the season. But Mr. Troop, what are your thoughts on holdouts or hold-ins, so to speak? And just how do you think it affects teams, their contracts, and all that stuff?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you this. My straightforward answer would just be that this when it comes down to the money, sometimes it gets real messy,
For sure.
or sometimes these things are just, I guess, you know, uh, just off-season drama. But I have to agree with that. What you said. I mean, you don't want to keep driving a car that you're trying to sell. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, if that's what the guys want, and yeah, I have to say, I feel like this is kind of becoming a bigger thing, and I feel like maybe I'm just noticing it a lot, compared to before. But I feel like the salary game is just changing right in front of our eyes. I mean, look at Justin Jefferson and these young quarterbacks. Just oh my.
Yeah, absolutely. With the salary cap continuing to rise, luckily players are continuing to fight for more pieces of the pie, so to speak. The NFL makes so much money. I mean, it's just disgusting the amount of revenue they bring in, and players aren't really getting paid that much money compared to it. So it's good to see them continue to try to fight and try to earn more pay. The unions trying their best, but unfortunately, they haven't done a great job. The fact that you can sign a contract that's not guaranteed is still crazy. It's just mind-boggling to me that the NFL gets away with it, but they'll probably continue to do so. I don't necessarily see that changing. So yeah, I understand it. I get that players are just going to keep fighting for more money because hey, they're the ones that are providing the product. Like the owners aren't going out there and playing the games. General managers aren't going out there and playing. I mean, it's these guys getting CTE, unfortunately, and doing all these intense things to make more money, for themselves and for their families. So totally understand. Obviously in an ideal world, none of them would make millions or billions of dollars just playing football because that's not worth that much money. But, that's the nature of the world that we're in. But speaking of extensions, the Bucs have kind of settled into a place where they're not necessarily due to give another player an extension for maybe a year or two after Wirfs, but thinking big picture after Tristan Wirfs, who do you think the next Buck is to get an extension?
Oh man, I don't know. I mean, how many young studs do we have?
For
That have a
sure.
bright
Yeah.
future. Oh, I guess I'll let you go first, just to kind of paint a picture in my head because I don't want to just say
Right.
no odd name either.
Yeah, no, I feel you. It's tough because they haven't done a great job in recent drafts. Unfortunately, a lot of the guys that
Hmm.
they've drafted haven't really turned out great. Um, the only name that the only few names that come to mind, and it's not even necessarily young guys, Vita Vea, because his contract is set to expire at least maybe in a few years. So
Yeah,
maybe
I think
he's
he'll be a free agent 2027. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So he might be seeking a new deal next year just because he's up there in age. He wants to get paid. Kalijah Cansey had a really good rookie year, so maybe he ends up being a guy that sticks around beyond his rookie year. But then again, he's got a long way to go. He's still got 4 more years on his rookie deal, so a lot can happen between now and then. Rashad White, I know he's kind of a hot button guy in this show, but I don't know that he's worthy of an extension. I don't think the Bucs are going to be willing to shell out any money of value to him because the running back position is just so volatile. By the time his contract expires, he'll be 25 or 26. Who knows how much thread is going to be on those tires? So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question. If I had to put money on someone, I guess it'd be Vita Vea. But even him, maybe the Bucs decide to part ways with him because at that point he'll be a bit up there in age. So I don't know. Those are kind of names that pop to my head. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, are there any other names you can think of, or it's kind of a tough question, which is kind of why I asked it because it's kind of an interesting one.
No, I was just gonna go with Vita Vea.
Yeah,
Maybe sprinkle in Rashad White, but I mean, it's just too early. You think
for
about
sure.
you think about all those guys who have gotten extensions, who deserve the big money, like Baker, Antoine Winfield, Mike Evans. I'm not I'm not gonna say like Levante David deserves an extension. So and then we're already talking about where so it all just comes down to okay, well, who's left? And yeah, I mean, I guess so. I think Vita Vea is probably the most realistic option in this case. Um, that'd be cool to see. I mean, I wish all the best for Kalijah Kancey, and I hope everything works out for him and Yaya Diaby as well. That'd be dope to keep them both, and they just
Absolutely.
turn into Tampa's dynamic duo.
Yeah, because if you're signing both of them to extensions, that means they both hit. That's a great thing. That means that
Yeah.
they're both playing really, really well. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Kate Otten, maybe his name gets thrown around
Oh
with the extension.
man.
One guy we haven't mentioned at all, Chris Godwin. He's an impending free agent this season, but I think that it's kind of become such a foregone conclusion that he's probably not sticking around. Like the Bucs aren't going to be able to afford to keep him around. I think the drafting of McMillan kind of signals that maybe they're willing to move on from Chris Godwin, which is a shame because he's a talented receiver. But at the same time, you got to make decisions. There's only so much salary cap to go around. So I do get it. And it's just unfortunately a reality of the Bucs, of the NFL in general for sure. So kind of an interesting conversation, kind of an interesting thought process to go through. But I thought it was worth a discussion. Another thing that I was thinking about, the lists for that top 100 list. I mean, they come out with it every year. It's kind of silly, just training camp fodder. But Mike Evans came in at 26, Antoine Winfield Jr. at 46. So what were your initial thoughts? Too low, too high? Any guys that you are hoping crack the top 20? Like, I'm kind of surprised Vita Vea is not on this top 100 list, but I'm certainly not expecting him to come in the top 20 or anything. So what were your thoughts on these rankings so far and the Bucs players that are listed on them?
Yeah, man. I mean, I clicked on it, and I remember obviously Antoine Winfield Jr. and Mike and had made it. I just forgot which number. So I went from 21 to 30, 31 to 40, 41 to 50, and all that. But I was fine with Mike's. I was fine with Mike's number, but I don't know about Antoine Winfield at 46. I feel like you could bump him up a little bit for sure. But these rankings are just all over the place, and some of these things that they state in these are just bogus, like I just remember one of them that caught my eye was Justin Herbert's, which was like, oh, he's like the new coach is starstruck by his capabilities, it's like, okay, as he should be, man, but he's a quarterback one for the Chargers,
Right. Yeah, it's kind
but
of one of those things that almost sounds like AI generated, or like they're just, yeah, they type that into Chat GPT, write a paragraph about Justin Herbert.
I'm telling you, man, it's these interns.
Yeah, the interns are running out of adjectives to
It's
describe
off
Justin.
season, which means the interns start working.
That's right. Yeah, they can't they can't keep around the full-time guys all year because there's only so much to write about in the
Well,
off.
full-time guys are all grown men taking time off during the summer, with their families.
Yeah,
These are
yeah,
probably just a bunch of 24, 25-year-old lads just, looking to keep busy.
for sure.
Don't have a family maybe, but anyways, I'm going up on a tangent for no reason.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the pitfalls of internships and unpaid labor, but yeah, that's it's a depressing thing to think about. But more power to them. Hope they get promotions, hope they get full-time work out of it. But yeah, if they're using Chat GPT like that sentence sounds like they are, then fool man, good luck to them because my goodness, that's brutal.
But it makes you wonder why they didn't add Vita Vea to that. I feel like he definitely could have been top 100 for sure.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really impactful player. I know it's a tough thing because you have to value position impact and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
Vita Vea is a great player, but he's kind of a limited in what he does. But what
Right.
he does really well. So
Yep.
I kind of get it on the one hand, but also on the
Hmm.
other hand, like he's one of the best at what he does. So it's hard not to include him on this kind of list. So I don't know. It's kind of it's a tough thing. You're always going to have tough calls. You're going to have the honorable mentions and all that. Like Baker wasn't included. I think he was included as an
Mm.
honorable mention because he plays the quarterback position, super high impact and all that stuff. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And the Vita Vea getting left off is a tough thing to swallow, but at the same time, I kind of get it. But the impact position thing is kind of where I guess they're coming from. But if you're looking for a big impact on your wardrobe, if you're looking for something that's going to make a huge difference, big turnaround for your clothing options and stuff like that, definitely check out shop.rblrsports.com. We've got some great gear on there for the Rays, Bucks, Lightning, Rowdies, you name it, Tampa Bay sports related. We've got it for you. Definitely check it out there. We've got a promo code that's Cannon, CANNONS. Type that bad boy in, you get 10% off your entire order. And just check it out. We've got some really, really great gear for all Tampa Bay sports related content. So definitely check it out. But after that little plug, we're going to get into our position battles because, hey, that's what training camp's all about, right? Guys are fighting for playing time. They're fighting for a spot. They're trying to impress coaches, front office executives, and maybe not even just with the Bucs. Guys are playing hopefully for a spot on another team if things don't work out in Tampa. So, all that being said, what's a position battle that you're necessarily looking forward to playing out? You can give me one on each side of the ball. So what are some position battles that you're really, really looking at when as training camp and the preseason progresses?
Yeah, I think the one for the offense, at least for me, is figuring out who's going to be our third wide receiver. Out of Sterling Shepard, out of Trey Palmer, and Jalen McMillan. Because I've heard good things about all of them, but I haven't heard anything special about any of them either. But obviously, all the focus has to be on Evans and Godwin, of course. But that's probably the big battle I think is that I'm thinking of on the offensive side. Now, defense. Oh man, this one's interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people on the chopping block, if you ask me, I think a lot of people. I mean, just think about it. I mean, minus, all right, man, minus like Elijah Cansey or even Yaya Diaby. I feel like Logan Hall has something to prove. I'm looking forward to seeing Chris Braswell and JTS maybe kind of battle. You know, um, and then looking at our cornerback room, I want to see, is Tyke Smith, was he worth the pick at all, or what can he do for us? And on top of that, I mean, just everything about our DB unit has always been concerning. Obviously, happy to see we got Winfield and Whitehead there, but let's see what Jamel Dean does. But I'm curious to see if any of these people make a name or they tell me anything. People like Josh Hayes, Keenan Isaac, Kayvon Merriweather, Bryce Hall, Tavir Thomas. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's a lot of question marks for sure. Um,
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, definitely not even necessarily just like starting spots with the secondary, but also those depth pieces, fighting for the backup roles. Yeah, it's going to be a lot of that because Zion McCollum seems to be kind of the de facto CB2, sort of so to speak.
hmm
For better or for worse, he's kind of slotted into that position. So I think it's kind of the rest of that. Who's the starting nickel? Who's going to be the backup outside guy? And do they maybe look to free agency? And during the preseason or as training camp progresses, maybe they grow dissatisfied with who they have brought in. So I don't know. It's a lot of question marks. Like you said, Tyke Smith, I think, is a fascinating name to watch because he played a little bit of safety at Georgia, so maybe he kind of shifts around a little bit, sort of a Swiss Army knife kind of guy. So yeah, I think that's a big position battle. But yeah, like you mentioned, for me on the defensive side, just the defensive line really is the huge thing for me, especially with Randy Gregory not looking like he's going to be a Buck. It's looking worse and worse every day. He doesn't report to
yeah.
training camp, unfortunately. I'm not sure how they are going to handle that. I'm not sure how it's going to all play out, but if I had to put money on it, I would put money on Randy Gregory not being a Buck. So that kind of leaves a hole on the edge rusher spot. Like you mentioned, JTS and Yaya and Braswell. Who knows who kind of emerges and comes out as the starting two outside linebackers from that group. But I think that it's really important. Pass rushing has become, it's always been one of the most important parts of football, and that certainly is more true than ever. And if the Bucs can't figure that out quickly, that to me concerns me more than the secondary, almost, more than the DB room, just because there's only so much you can do with wide receivers nowadays. There's only so much you can do in coverage. So if you're not getting after the quarterback, if you're not applying pressure, things can get real ugly real quick. But like you mentioned on the offensive side of the ball, that wide receiver 3 spot, really, really interesting to see how that plays out. Sterling Shepard is a name to kind of watch. They brought him in as a veteran. I can't imagine that he would have agreed to sign without maybe at least a promise that he would at least get some looks with the first team. But then again, they also spent that 3rd-round pick on McMillan. Trey Palmer did a nice enough job last year in that spot. So I'd imagine all 3 of those guys are going to be in a pretty intense battle for that 3rd spot. But also the interior offensive line is going to be huge, just because they invested in Graham Barton. He's their center. I'd have a hard time believing that he's not that spot. But then the guard positions are really, really interesting. We talked about Ben Brederson earlier in the episode, the former New York Giant. Cody Mauch, obviously the 2nd-round pick from last year. They also invested a late-round pick in a guy out of UTEP, I believe.
Elijah Klein. Yep.
Elijah Klein, exactly. Took the words right out of my mouth. So Elijah Klein, who knows what he's going to provide, what people seem to be kind of excited about him. I don't know. I think that's going to be something else to monitor. Definitely the wide receiver position and the interior offensive line.
Our team is looking different, like just overall on both ends, but I would say more on that defense. You look at our roster 2 or 3 years ago, it's completely different from now. So think about this now. We got KJ Britt now stepping up to the plate. And
absolutely.
we've seen a little bit of KJ Britt, but we haven't seen full season KJ Britt. So that's another thing to look at. But I do have a question to ask you, because I did see that I did see this kind of on PewterReport.com. I want to give them a shout out, as well as a little bit of talk going on with the backup quarterback situation, because I believe John Walford does have experience with Liam Cohn, and Kyle Trask is back, or 2nd string. But what have we seen from Kyle Trask to really kind of even solidify him as a 2nd string? So I don't know if you have any thoughts with that. That was just kind of my little question.
No, absolutely. The backup quarterback spot is incredibly important, especially because, the interior offensive line is a bit of a question mark. So, hopefully Baker stays upright and healthy, and obviously all that stuff. But the backup quarterback spot is always going to be something to talk about. I think Wolford probably has maybe a bit of an edge, because like you mentioned, the Cohen background, him and Cohen were together in LA. So that's really interesting to think about. But they still, I hate that this label follows him and might help him at all, but they did invest a 2nd-round pick in Trask. They might feel the burden of that. They might feel like, oh, well, maybe we want to see this through. But at this point, I feel like it's a sunk cost. Just got to cut your losses, not even think about that. But who knows? Who knows if that factors into the decision-making process at all for the Bucs. But it's definitely something that's another battle to monitor. I'm curious to see how that all plays out for sure. But we'll see. But speaking of things to prove, because I think Kyle Trask has a lot to prove going into training camp to see if he can secure that backup spot. But I don't know if he has the most to prove going into training camp, because it's the backup quarterback spot. I don't know that we'll invest that much into it. But who do you think has the most to prove going into training camp? Maybe he's fighting for a starting spot. Maybe he's trying to live up to draft expectations. Who's the guy that you're looking at that really has a kind of an edge on his shoulder, or a chip on his shoulder?
I'd say Zion McCollum.
Ooh, yeah. Okay. I like that.
I'd say Zion McCollum, only because we've seen it's been up and down for me when it comes to Zion McCollum. So and with our DB room, looking like I think our DB room, it can bring competition to Zion McCollum. Bryce Hall, I mean, I don't I don't know some of these guys. I don't think I've ever seen Tyreek Thunderberg, but they're all coming after him as well. But I mean, the thing that I want to see from him is like, are we comfortable with him being our starter, quarterback? So I think he is. I think he's one example. I'm looking forward to seeing how KJ Britt's going to kind of fill that hole in. I don't
Absolutely.
think he has big shoes to fill, with Devin White's departure, but I think he definitely has something to prove. But I do feel kind of happy because overall, I've never heard bad things about, or felt bad about JJ Russell. And then Savasier Dennis, a little
Yeah.
banged up last season, so we didn't really see the best of him. But yeah, I say KJ Britt, Zion McCollum. Offense, uh, sheesh, man. I don't know actually. Maybe actually, I don't. You know what? I don't know.
Hey, that's a fair answer because
Yeah,
I feel like there's a lot more up in the air on the defensive side of the ball than there is on
there
the
is.
offensive side. There are a few more positions that aren't as locked in as the offensive side, but I think Cody Mauch is kind of an interesting name to bring up because man, he was brought in. Everyone was real excited about that pick, and rightfully so. And he made the transition from tackle to guard, and he didn't do great to start the season, but I think he kind of settled in as it went along. So you're kind of hoping that he can take a big leap forward in that second year, similar to Luka Decky. Luka Decky took a huge step forward last year. I think Gadecki was one of the most improved players on the Bucs roster last year, and he did a fantastic job at the right tackle position. So they're obviously hoping for a similar little storyline with Cody Mauch. But I'm going to also go with JTS. I mean, we've said JTS's name, I feel like, for the past 2 or 3 years when it comes to having, something to prove in training camp. I don't know. It might be too little too late for him, unfortunately. I don't know that he'll be able to figure something out in the NFL at this point. But he could have a little late little burst, trying to figure out if he can earn a second contract in the NFL. I think that he's got a lot to prove, not just to himself or to the Bucs, but to other teams around the NFL. Since the Bucs have declined that fifth-year option, he doesn't have any guarantees in front of him. So, he's definitely going to have to prove himself to the rest of the roster. And Logan Hall, I mean, we've brought his name up before. He
Yep.
was a second round pick and he hasn't necessarily lived up to that billing. But I feel like it's kind of his job to lose as in regards to one of those defensive line positions. Him and
Well,
Clyde Yancey should be really, really nice next to each other, but Logan Hall hasn't proven that yet. So he's got to kind of step it up for sure.
I agree with you. I agree
Yeah,
with you, especially because you got people like William Golston right behind
yeah,
Logan Hall, and then you got Chris Braswell, the guy who we drafted, right behind JTS. So
for sure.
I do have to ask you, you think Chris Braswell has a chance of taking JTS's spot if he just performs like he did last year? Because
Oh
right now I
yeah,
believe JTS, yeah, he's a starter right now. So
yeah. I mean,
um,
technically a starter,
yeah,
I
just
guess.
because,
It's
yeah.
weird. There's not really that, like you said, there's so much up in the air with the defense. There's not really necessarily a starter on the edge.
Hmm.
It's kind of hard to figure that out. But yeah, if Braswell performs like he did at Alabama, absolutely. He was fantastic there, and he could come in and really kind of, I don't want to say snatch JTS's chain or anything, but he could do a job. He could do a great job of coming in and proving a lot of people wrong because he was only a second round pick. He kind of fell a little bit. Some people thought maybe he'd sneak into the first, but he probably has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. I'm sure he's aggravated about that, because that affects his paycheck as well. So I'm sure he's very excited to go out and be able to prove that, maybe he should have been a first round pick. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see if Braswell can come in and steal that spot. But on that same vein, is there anyone else that you could maybe see stealing a starting spot from an incumbent guy that's kind of been there for a few years? Maybe the Bucs have kind of grown tired of it. So are there any guys that you could see stealing a starting spot?
No, I don't. Thinking about looking at our starters, I can't imagine any of these backups taking someone else's spot other than what we just mentioned. Maybe yeah, Braswell and Golston take Hall and JTS's spot, but
Yeah,
I mean maybe Bryce Hall and Zion McCollum battle it out, or
I was about to say that's probably
yeah,
the most
that's probably the only
interesting.
one because I mean
Yeah, I mean,
I have the depth chart in front of me right now, so just glancing at it quickly, I mean, you look at our starters and then you look at the guys behind them, and you're like, I don't know if this
Yeah, their
backup
backups
really
should be.
has.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everyone has fair game, but I mean, if I had to put my money on it, I don't think Mike Green is going to take Elijah Cansey's spot.
For sure, absolutely. um, yeah, I mean, KJ Britt's spot isn't really necessarily an incumbent, but I guess technically,
Yeah.
he was the last second starting linebacker. I'd love to see Servassier Dennis kind of sneak up and maybe snatch that starting spot. The nickel corner spot is something that I think is really
Hmm.
interesting. Christian Isian. He did a great job last year, but they obviously brought in a bunch of backup not slot corners for better or for worse, with Javier Thomas, and then, like we said, Tyke Smith. And the third wide receiver spot, Trey Palmer, like I said before, he did a nice job last year, but they spent a third round pick on the position. They brought in Sterling Shepard. So the Bucs clearly, want to have contingency plans, insurance, because unfortunately injuries have already started happening. Yeah, so I think that those are kind of some interesting positions to watch for sure. Any other guys you can think of maybe that are competing for those starting spots, or if we kind of run its course, you think?
You know what? I think we've run its course. I do have
Yeah,
to say honestly that I'm really looking forward to seeing who are the kind of relevant backups. So I'm really curious to see how these rookies turn out. Specifically, um, when it comes to the offense, I'm looking more at Bucky Irving than Jalen McMillan, to be honest.
really interesting.
Because
Okay.
I want to see if this guy we got is going to be someone who can really pair well with Rashad White. Because Rashad White's not like someone that you can just completely count on. Unfortunately, we kind of did last year,
Right.
but we shouldn't. He deserves a break, and on top of that, we got to change it up a little bit as well. So, I mean, we've heard great things about Bucky, and I guess some of us have seen it, depending on if they've seen the highlight reel. But you know, everyone's got a highlight reel, before they make it to
Yeah.
the NFL. But
Oh, of course.
only a few have become relevant. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you make it to the NFL, you were the best player at one point in your life on the
Oh
field.
yeah.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think Bucky Irving, it's just weird. It's not really a change of pace back because he's more of a scat back, which is sort of how I think of with Rashad White. He led the NFL. I think he either led or was near the top in the NFL in receiving yards for running backs last year, and he did a great job in that role. I think he did. With the screens and everything like that. And I think Cohen's probably coming in thinking, oh man, we're going to incorporate that a lot more into this offense, and rightfully so. It was explosive when they did go that
Mhm.
route. So yeah, I don't know how Bucky Irving fits into this offense. That's a great point because that backup running back spot. I mean, they brought back Chase Edmonds, so maybe they view him as
And
kind of the
then
change of pace
yeah,
power guy as much.
and then we
Chase
got
Edmonds
Sean
was
Tucker.
right. Sean Tucker, maybe they bring him back in. He only played sparingly last year, so there's just a lot of
Right.
question marks for sure at that running back position. Absolutely. But yeah, we're coming towards the end of our episode. My goodness, if I could speak. We really appreciate y'all tuning in. As training camp continues to progress, next week will only be 3 days away. We're coming closer
Ooh.
and closer to the preseason. We're really excited about that. We'll have some actual games to talk about pretty soon. But definitely stick with us. And if you liked what you heard, or if you're a first time listener, whatever the case may be, definitely hit that like and subscribe button. We'd really appreciate it. You can give us a follow at RBLR Sports as well. Follow our other content that we've got with the Rays, Bucks, Lightning, Rowdies, the Sun, anything Tampa sports related. We're going to be talking about it. So we'd really appreciate it. But thank you all again. And thank you to my co-host, Musab Tariq, for sticking with me. We really appreciate y'all tuning in. And as always, go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.